I was standing in my own driveway, wrists cuffed so tight I could feel the metal bite into my skin, while my brand-new Rolls-Royce gleamed in the summer sun just a few feet away. The neighbors had gathered like it was some kind of reality show, whispering and snapping photos. And there she was, Karen, arms folded, lips curled into that smug little smile she always wore when she thought she'd won. She stepped closer, her voice low enough so only I could hear. "Sell it to me for $20,000 and maybe I can make this whole mess disappear." $20,000 for a car worth more than some houses in this neighborhood. My heart was pounding, not just from the cuffs, but from the audacity. I knew in that moment this wasn't just about a car. This was about control. And Karen was about to learn I don't play by her rules. I live in one of those picture-perfect gated communities you see in glossy real estate magazines, rows of manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and an HOA that seems more concerned about the shade of your front door than actual neighborhood safety. My house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a spot I'd chosen for privacy and peace. For years, it was exactly that, until the day I brought home my dream car. The Rolls-Royce wasn't just a vehicle. It was the physical proof of years of grinding, sleepless nights, and sacrifices no one saw. Every time I slid behind the wheel, I felt the weight of that hard work turn into pride. Most neighbors admired it, except Karen. She lived 3 houses down with a porch that overlooked half the street, a self-appointed queen with binocular vision, and a rule book she treated like holy scripture. She had a reputation for sending warning letters over things as small as a flower pot in the wrong spot. But I didn't think much of it at first. I figured she might glare, maybe gossip, and then move on. I had no idea that my new car would trigger something in her that would turn my quiet cul-de-sac into a war zone. It happened the very next morning after I brought the Rolls home. I was outside, giving it a careful wipe down, when I noticed the sound of quick, sharp footsteps on the sidewalk. I looked up, and there was Karen, frozen mid-stride, staring at the car like she'd just seen a crime in progress. Her mouth opened, slightly, but instead of a compliment or even a casual hello, she blurted out, "That's not allowed here." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" She crossed her arms, the classic Karen stance, and said, "The HOA strictly prohibits vehicles like that. It disrupts the aesthetic of the neighborhood." I almost laughed. It was parked in my own driveway, spotless, and quieter than most sedans when it started. She circled it slowly, inspecting every detail like a detective, looking for evidence, then pulled out her phone and snapped pictures without asking. "I'll be reporting this," she said matter-of-factly, before turning sharply on her heel. I thought it was ridiculous, some petty neighbor overreacting. But as she walked away, I caught a glimpse of her smiling, like she'd just stumbled onto an opportunity. At the time, I figured she'd file some useless complaint, and that would be the end of it. What I didn't know was that in her mind, the Rolls-Royce had just become her personal mission, and she wasn't going to stop until she either got rid of it or got her hands on it. At first, it was just a couple of notes in my mailbox, typed in all caps, citing imaginary HOA rules about luxury vehicles and visual harmony. I ignored them, figuring they'd fizzle out, but then the complaints started piling up. One morning, I stepped outside to find an official-looking letter taped to my door, claiming I was violating a noise ordinance because I'd started the Rolls at 8 a.m. Never mind that it purred quieter than a lawnmower. A few days later, another notice accused me of operating a commercial car dealership from my home because Karen had apparently been telling anyone who'd listen that I was importing and selling exotic cars. The rumors spread fast. Even a few neighbors I'd been friendly with started giving me strange looks. I caught her more than once standing at the edge of my driveway, phone in hand, taking pictures from every angle, sometimes at night, her silhouette lit by the glow of the screen. One afternoon, I overheard her in hushed conversation with another HOA board member saying, "We can make him get rid of it, if we apply enough pressure." That's when the letters turned into threats of fines, thousands of dollars, supposedly. Approved by the HOA, though I'd never seen a vote or notice. I started wondering if she was forging documents or pulling strings behind closed doors. Every week, her tactics escalated. Anonymous calls to the police about suspicious activity at my address, strangers slowing down to take pictures, and even footprints in my backyard after a rainy night. Each incident felt like another. Chess move in her game, pushing me toward some breaking point I couldn't yet see. And through it all, she wore that same infuriating half-smile, as if she already knew how the story would end. But I couldn't shake the question gnawing at me. Why was she going this far over a car? Unless it was never really about the rules at all. It was a warm Saturday morning, the kind where the air feels still and the neighborhood is unusually quiet. I had just finished detailing the rolls, its black paint reflecting the sun like a mirror, when I heard the sudden crunch of tires on gravel. 2 police cruisers rolled into the cul-de-sac, lights flashing but sirens off, the kind of quiet. Arrival that made my stomach knot. Before I could even process what was happening, the officers stepped out, one of them calling my name and asking me to step away from the vehicle. I froze, hands slightly raised, heart thudding in my chest. That's when I saw her, Karen, standing. Just behind the cruisers, arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes locked on me with a glint of triumph. She didn't say a word at first. She didn't need to. One officer informed me there had been multiple reports accusing me of selling unlicensed vehicles, laundering money, and even trafficking stolen cars from my property. I almost laughed at the absurdity, almost, until I felt the cold. Steel of handcuffs click around my wrists. The sound was sharper than it should have been, like a nail sealing a coffin. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, and some stepped out onto porches, whispering like it was the biggest drama the neighborhood had ever seen. As they led me toward the patrol car, Karen finally stepped forward, her heels clicking against the pavement. She leaned in, her perfume overpowering, and in a voice just loud enough for me to hear, she said, "Sell it to me for $20,000, and maybe I can make this whole thing disappear." Her smirk deepened when she saw the shock on my face. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules or the HOA or even the neighborhood's aesthetic. This had been a setup from the very beginning, a carefully staged plan to scare me, humiliate me, and back me into a corner until I had no choice but to give her what she wanted. The cuffs dug into my skin, but it wasn't the pain that burned. It was the realization that I'd underestimated just how far she was willing to go. And as I sat in the back of that patrol car, watching her linger by the rolls with a possessive look, one thought hardened in my mind. She'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Sitting in the back of the patrol car, I kept my mouth shut until we reached the station. The moment I was allowed a phone call, I contacted my attorney, who wasted no time arriving with a thick folder of documents, proof of my car's ownership, my clean business record, and a copy of the HOA bylaws that said absolutely nothing about owning luxury vehicles. Within an hour, the accusations began to crumble. The police pulled up the complaints on file, and most of them traced back to the same phone number, Karen's. Even worse for her, one of the officers had his body cam running when she made that little $20,000 offer. When my attorney explained that her proposal sounded an awful lot like extortion, the mood in the room shifted. Suddenly, the questions weren't for me. They were for her. The officers returned to my house later that afternoon, this time to hand her a formal notice of investigation for harassment, filing false police reports, and abuse of HOA authority. Neighbors who once kept their distance now stood watching, as she was escorted off her porch, sputtering about misunderstandings and miscommunication. She wasn't arrested that day, but she was stripped of her HOA board position within the week, fined heavily, and slapped with a restraining order preventing her from coming within 50 feet of my property or my car. The cuffs had left red, marks on my wrists, but they faded quickly. The memory of watching her lose every ounce of her fake power, that's a mark that's going to last forever. A week later, the sun was setting over the cul-de-sac, bathing everything in a golden glow. The Rolls-Royce sat in my driveway, polished to perfection, its chrome catching the last light of the day. I was leaning against the hood, coffee in hand, when I saw her. Karen shuffled past on the opposite sidewalk, head down, clutching a grocery bag like it was a shield. No clipboard, no smug smile, just silence. She didn't look at me. She looked at the car. For a long moment, her eyes lingered, and I could almost see the storm of frustration boiling behind them. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The car spoke for me, gleaming like a trophy she could never touch. As she turned the corner, I took a slow sip and thought, some things you can buy. And some things, Karen, you just can't steal. If you enjoyed watching Karen's little empire crumble, make sure you hit that like button so more people can see this story. Subscribe for more outrageous HOA tales, because trust me, Karen isn't the only one out there trying to play neighborhood dictator. And if you've ever dealt with a neighbor like her, drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one. Let's expose the Karens together.